right, are we good? Are we recording? Yep. All right. So welcome everyone to the Tuesday, August the 3rd meeting of the Community Development Committee. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. If I can have somebody move and second the agenda. Moved by Mr. Modler, seconded by Councillor John Hunter. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Number 3 on our agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof. Does anyone have any disclosures to make tonight?
I do.
Hearing none, moving to number 4, we will go through business arising from the previous committee meeting minutes, if there are any. Does anyone have any business arising from those minutes?
Well, I do.
Go ahead.
And
Feel free to keep going.
I have a lot of concern with the minutes.
Okay.
And apparently we've approved the minutes at the council meeting, and I apologize for that because I should have caught a lot of these things prior to the council meeting. And if I had, I would have wanted some major changes. I'm going to refer to one thing specifically, which is in effect business arising. And it occurs on page 7 of 72.
Yes.
All right, and on the top of page 7, under item number 3, third paragraph down, members noted the butternut trees on the property and commented that the developer could make use of the butternut grove on Blair Road. Now, in fact, there are no butternut trees on the property. That's a fact. So how the members could note that there were butternut trees on the property escapes me. And in fact, I think what happened at the meeting was that somebody had reported that they suspected that there were butternut trees on the property. I don't know who it was that reported that, but the minutes don't say that. The minutes don't say that members received a complaint or members received a comment that somebody suspected butternut trees on the property. The minutes say members noted the butternut trees on the property. There's a major difference there, and it costs the developer $1,500. That's what happens to these kinds of situations. And it's, so I have a lot of problems. That's business arising. I'm not going to belabor the point because the minutes have already been approved. But there's a question of when comments are made, what is the source of those comments and what is the accuracy and the degree of expertise of the individual making the comments? That's the issue. And how does that get reflected so that we as the governing body here recognize that what we were told was not a fact, but a report or a suspicion of a fact. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. To staff, my recollection is, was there not a report in our last agenda that stated there were butternut trees?
There were no butternut trees.
No, that was in our council meeting that they decided that. But in our last CDC meeting, were we not led to believe that there were butternut trees by a report that we received as?
They were going to investigate, hire.
But was there not a report? Did we not figure out that it wasn't within our hands, that it was within the developer's hands to deal with that report?
Through the chair. In last CDC's agenda package, there was a letter from a resident who was concerned, and the letter from the resident stated there were butternut trees on the property. The report from Novitat just said that a resident said there were butternut trees on the property. Staff's correspondence with the applicant on behalf of the owner was, are you aware that this resident said that? Have you taken any action in this regard? And not saying that they needed to take action, but just reminded them of their responsibilities in the Endangered Species Act to comply with the Endangered Species Act. And the committee's recommendation to council included not a condition on the severance, but just a note on the severance to remind the owner of their responsibility to comply with the Endangered Species Act. Later, for the member, for the members of the committee who worked on council, later during the month, the owner of the property did engage the Conservation Authority, who has qualified butternut health assessors on staff to go visit the property and determine the species of the tree. They were in fact black walnut trees, not butternut trees. And so council made the recommendation to the counties and did not include that statement because there was no reason for it. We've confirmed that there are no butternut trees on the site.
So thinking about what the mayor said, in fairness, I probably would agree that it's not totally accurate that we noted there were butternut trees on the property. It was probably more accurate then that we noted that there was potentially butternut trees on the property. And if that was the case, then yeah, fair enough. So your comment would be well taken that it's not necessarily accurate. Is that the point?
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. More? Do you have further?
No.
No? Okay. Anyone else? Sorry. Steve? No?
No.
All right, so then we're on to delegations and presentations. And we have Nabi and Hussein from Terrapin Farms, I believe, online with us tonight. Welcome to the CDC meeting.
Hi, guys.
Looking forward to hearing your presentation tonight. We go by sort of loose rules that 10 minutes for a presentation, and then follow up from the members if they have questions for you. Is that okay?
Yeah, that works. No problem at all.
Do we still have him muted? I can't hear him.
Can you hear me?
No, he's unmuted.
No.
And
Can you guys, are you guys able to hear me?
That's Nabi. Nabi, I can't hear you. You seem to be muted on our end somehow. Or your end, maybe.
Let me try to myself.
Mic isn't working.
Hey, can you guys hear me now?
The software is detecting that he's speaking.
Yeah.
Still nothing, sorry.
Let me try. I'll try to jump back into the meeting.
He's muted on his own computer.
This is showing he's not muted.
He's off, and when it turns yellow, it means that it's detecting that he's speaking. Like the
Hi, can you
frame
guys hear me now?
What about the physical TV?
They have the volume up to 60 some.
There's no noise at all.
Hi, are you guys able to hear me?
Can we try Hussein to see if we can hear him?
Yes, hi. Hello, can you hear me?
Because it doesn't look like we can hear him either, right?
Exactly. So it's probably on our
They
end.
can
Okay.
hear us.
You guys can hear us.
Yeah,
clear.
Give us a wave
Yes,
if
we
you can
can.
hear us. Give us a wave if you can hear us.
This is what it is.
So they
Yep,
can hear us.
they can hear us.
Okay, we just can't hear you guys yet, so bear with us.
okay.
The settings have been
Okay.
changed. Everything seems to be running through the mic okay.
I think I have time to set it up.
Hey, I will try to jump back into the meeting.
I didn't change anything, I just did a test run.
So our speakers are working.
The TVs are working, that's what.
Okay, so let's just ask him to speak because he just got kicked out of the meeting.
Yeah, 'cause we hear him.
All right, let's try him. As soon as he gets connected, it just says he's connecting to audio. Let's just, all right, let's try again, Nabi.
Hi, can you guys hear me now?
Now I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Is Hussein still on?
And can you hear me as well?
Yeah, we can hear you as well, Hussein. Well, welcome to the CDC meeting.
Okay, perfect.
You probably heard me before
Thank
we
you. We're happy to be here.
fire away.
Hello? Sorry, it's cutting off.
Yeah,
Hello?
Hussein is out west right now. His reception might be a little bad right now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, maybe if he cuts his video instead and just
Yeah.
goes with
Okay.
just the mic.
Perfect. Is this good? Can you guys hear me?
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So I just wanted to start by introducing myself. So my name is Hussein Baidoun. I'm a healthcare professional and I'm the CEO of Chirping Farms. I'm also the license holder. With me is Nabi Alexandre Dabé Champagne. He's one of my he's one of my partners and co-founders of Chirping Farms. He's also the co-founder of Chirping Contracting, which is a general contracting company which is specialized in cannabis cultivation center buildings. The two other partners that we have with us are Ibrahim Baidoun, who is my brother as well, and who is the co-founder of Chirping Contracting, and also Jean-Cédric Beauregard, who is one of our co-founders, and he is our cultivation specialist with over 15 years of experience. So since Nabi has been heading most of the discussions with the city and with the various groups involved, I will give him I'll allow him to speak and present our plan and our company, and then we'll be happy to answer whatever questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Hussein. I'd like to start off by thanking everyone of the committee for taking the time today to hear our presentation. It shouldn't be more than 5 to 10 minutes. I do feel a little bit anxious whenever I make presentations of the sort, so I'll try to sound as smooth as possible for you guys. So I'll go through the points that we have here. So we are Terpene Farms. We purchased the building located at 3209 County Road number 2 back in 2020. The building is approximately 5,000 square feet with over 1 acre of land on the property. The building and land were being used before we bought it as a storage and was pretty much left to survive time and nature's elements. But we are coming to turn around the property, making it a sustainable source of revenue and opportunity for future workers and investors. So we will be retrofitting the building to accommodate approximately 2,000 square feet of cultivation. The rest of the building will be used for cannabis activities such as drying, trimming, packaging, as well as office space. So we are currently applying for a micro cultivation with Health Canada. The micro cultivation allows for up to 2,100 square feet of cultivation space, but we do plan in the future to upgrade the license for a processing license, which will allow more diversified operations at Terpene Farms. Our facility is being built with the best available equipment on the market and will have one of the most efficient operations for a building of this size. For example, the layout, cannabis movement, air circulation, and HVAC, as well as the light spectrums and many other factors are very different than other buildings. Obviously, us being in the industry for as long as we've been and partaking in the design and actual building of multiple licensed producers across Canada, we've been able to observe and really create for our building a mix of the best techniques used in multiple cannabis facilities. Every single cultivation activity will be conducted inside of the building only. There are no activities at all being conducted outside of the building or anywhere else on the property. Therefore, we will be able to have an absolute control over the odors emitted by cannabis, filtrating and restraining them to the inside of the building only. We will use a mix of charcoal, HEPA, and UV filters that will ensure no odors at all from our building will be released outside and disrupt the community. We will accommodate 3 separate state-of-the-art flower rooms in the facility, which will allow us to have up to 18 harvests per year for a yearly production of over 600 kilograms. This will allow us to generate between $1 and $2 million in yearly revenue during our very first years of operations, enabling us to reinvest into the company and the community. So we are retrofitting the land, adding a new sewer system, and arranging the landscape in order to be environmentally friendly and protecting the city's infrastructure. For example, we are taking into account a water course at the far corner of the property, making sure we do not impact any natural fish habitat. We also have a very extensive stormwater management program, ensuring that water will be contained on the property for the next decades. Therefore, nothing will be going on the road or, like I mentioned, affecting the city's infrastructure. So we plan to open for the end of 2021 with our Health Canada application being in an advanced stage. We are also applying for we're in the process right now of applying for the zoning bylaw amendment, as well as the site plan approval. We have pretty much all of our documents in order. We just need to submit to Wendy the planning rationale, which is being prepared by our planners right now, as well as a surveying report. We should be able to provide those by the end of the week or during next week. So in the first 5 years of operations, we plan on expanding the business and Terpene Farms brand within the community, but also nationwide, giving said community exposure on a national stage within the industry. If the operation size needs to improve as well, meaning the grow spaces and all the operations that we need to conduct at Terpene Farms, we are open to finding another property within the county to do so, hoping for the company to remain within the same community for many years to come. As far as opportunities go for the members of this community, we will need to hire 1 full-time position and up to 5 part-time positions within the first few years of operations. We plan to upgrade to a processing license, as I mentioned before, which will allow us to offer new and different cannabis products. For example, edibles, extracts, packaged products, and many more. And this will obviously allow us to create new employment opportunities at Terpene Farms. We also hope to have a small storefront on the property where we will be able to offer safe, tested, and approved products to the community, therefore helping to displace the black market. Our team wishes to be involved in the community, as most of our members will end up creating a life and a family here. We plan on hiring locals as much as we can, being involved in community events, and helping local causes most important to us. So in conclusion, we really hope that you guys will welcome us into your community. And that's the presentation.
Thanks, Naveed.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys have any questions, please fire away.
I think there will be some for sure. Who wants to go first?
I-
Councillor Cameron? Fire away.
Yes, thank you. You did answer my question. So there will be a retail operation in your facility as well.
We're hoping to. This is something that is like being permitted whenever you apply for a micro cultivation license with Health Canada. So I mean, they're
Oh, no.
with the county, but it's something that's open to us and that we're hoping to accomplish as well.
Yeah, just to add on, just to be clear, our primary goal is to have a micro cultivation center. And then additionally, afterwards, if we are able, if we get the appropriate licenses, and if it's something that is feasible, we would consider adding on a storefront, but really the cultivation part is our priority.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Further?
Down here.
Council?
You answered my question, storefront, but if you're not gonna be having a storefront, will you still be needing the 1 full-time and 3 or 4 part-time? If you're not gonna have a storefront?
Yes, absolutely. We'll definitely, within the very first year of our creation, of us being operational, even without a storefront, we will need a 1 full-time position and up to 5 part-time positions for sure, because with the 3 flower rooms that we have and the kind of the flow of cannabis that we plan on having, it requires a lot of attention and a lot of work. So we will definitely need to hire 1 full-time and up to 5 part-time within the first year without any storefront.
Yeah, all the numbers that we gave, all the specifics are discounting a storefront.
Yeah.
No, I'm fine. This is fine.
No, I don't think it is.
Fine.
No question.
Mr. Melvin.
Just a couple. Do you have an existing company that does the same type of production?
We don't have a existing Health Canada licensed company that does the same type of production, although we have been involved in the industry for many years, and our master grower has been a cultivation expert for over 15 years. Us personally, myself and Ibrahim Baidun, we have been building cannabis like Health Canada licensed producers all over Ontario, Quebec, Manitoba for the past few years.
Are you associated with the Turpin Farms out of California?
No association.
But it's the exact same name.
Yeah, I didn't know that there was exactly a Terpene Farms in California. I didn't know they were an actual registered licensed producer. But yeah, it's the same name. It's a name we came up on our own, though. There's no foul ball here.
Yeah, no. The reason I'm asking is they're also in the cannabis production in California.
Yeah.
That's why I was just clarifying if you're associated with them.
Is that true?
Yeah, no, we definitely have no association with them whatsoever.
That's all my question.
Counselor?
Just one question. Basically, you're going to hire 1 full-time and part-time people. What type of education or experience backgrounds will you be looking for when you're hiring these people?
Well, for the full-time, anybody who has some sort of agricultural background would be good. Although we are open to training, this is definitely a very new industry. So there's not too many people that have, a background necessarily in cannabis. So we are willing to train new people.
Yeah, there's no real educational background that's needed. A lot of the skills associated with it will be on-the-job training, and which we will provide.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So good evening, gentlemen, and thank you very much for the presentation. Answered a few questions for me, but I have a number of others. First of all, is Terpene Farms a corporate entity or a limited partnership?
It's a corporation.
It is a corporation. Thank you very much. The next thing is the site itself is a very unsightly, presents very unsightly. I noticed that there's been some work done, but a lot of debris around the site. When do you intend to actually start the renovations that will be required to the building?
So we have our plans by Eastern Engineering that are complete, and we have our full funding that is obtained. So as soon as we are permitted by the city to start working, we're ready. So if it's this week, if it's next week, if it's next month, I don't know. But as soon as we get the green light, we are ready to start working, and we'll be working as quickly as we can. We're hoping to be done by the end of this year.
Yeah, if I may add, from the day that we get our permits, the outside part will be completely clean and arranged within a month or so. And then we'll be needing probably roughly 3 to 4 months to finish everything else.
Okay, so you can't begin until you get your building permit, and you can't get your building permit until after the site plan agreement has been entered into.
That's
And
correct.
so the site plan agreement would normally come to this committee on the first Monday of the month in order to get to council for the end of the month. Now, you're indicating that your application for a site plan agreement is not going to get to Wendy's desk until later this week or possibly next week. Are you anticipating or have you discussed with Wendy how the process will proceed from there to actually get you your site plan agreement?
Yeah, we've discussed it with Wendy. We're hoping to, the thing is, we were supposed to have everything submitted earlier, but there's been a few hiccups in the road, as there is starting any new business, which have delayed us tremendously. Right now, we gave Wendy the site plan approval application, the zoning bylaw amendment, the stormwater management report, as well as the full-on building plans. So we are hoping to, like I said, send the last two parts there, the planning rationale as well as the surveying report, hopefully by the end of the week. And we were discussing with her, and we were saying that the county could review both the site plan approval as well as the zoning bylaw amendment together within 45 days of the application. And I did speak with also Dwayne Crawford from the Chief Building Officer office earlier today. I've been speaking with him a lot in the last few weeks, and he's willing to work with us, to possibly give us some partial permits so that we could begin some of the works, especially outside, while we wait for the full application to be reviewed by the county.
Well, first of all, we're a township, not a county. We're a lower tier level of government here, and most of it.
Pardon me.
Most of it goes through us. So Wendy, what is the plan that as you see it? If I could.
Yes, absolutely.
Nabi and Hussein have done a pre-consultation with myself and Jordan at Novatech. The Conservation Authority was also present for the pre-consultation, and the county's provided some comments because we're on a county road. So they have a full list of what's required to come with their application. I believe they are right. We're just waiting for the planning rationale. And then we have an application. The Conservation Authority will need to review it, as will Novatech. Novatech will prepare a report, and then it will come to this committee.
So are you anticipating that the application for a site plan agreement will come back to this committee? So that would come back to this committee in September?
Yes.
Right, and then the site plan agreement, we wouldn't be in a position to enter into it until the end of September unless we hold a special council meeting in between.
Actually, if I may, there's a zoning bylaw amendment required as well. So I think both of those things could happen simultaneously, but the zoning bylaw amendment typically takes a little bit longer than the site plan control agreement because we need a public meeting
Right.
as well. So we should, it's usually 90 days once we have a complete application for zoning bylaw amendment, and we will do our very best to not have any unnecessary delays. And we've already worked with Turpin Farms to say that if you have your building permit application submitted as well, then we don't have to add delays as well. That could be ready by the time your zoning bylaw amendment and site plan control agreement are ready.
So what is your anticipated construction time after you have a building permit in hand?
We're anticipating 3 to 4 months. But we have all the contractors lined up. Everybody's ready to work. So if we do certain trades simultaneously, we'll have to verify it with the COVID guidelines, obviously. But depending on what we're able to push forward at the same time, we're pushing for 3 months for completion.
Okay, so I just wanted to kind of get your timelines clear in my mind. So now I'll proceed to the next set of questions. My understanding is, and just so you know, we visited your neighbor down the road, which is called Purple Farms.
Yeah, correct.
Is in the same business. And our understanding is that you can't apply to Health Canada or whatever government agency it is until your building is complete. to get your license, your growing license.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Because I know that even after you apply, there will be some sort of a delay, will there not?
Yeah, if I can speak on that, that's partially correct. Although it's because the full application requires the last stage of the application with Health Canada requires a walkthrough video of the building, basically showing the rooms, the security systems, the equipment and everything. But we've been applying for a license for the past 6 months, and we have everything registered into the Health Canada website right now for our application. So it will be reviewed. Like there's a lot of things that can be reviewed, like the security report, the good practice and procedures report can be reviewed by Health Canada while we finish construction and until the time that we send the walkthrough video.
Okay, and so now the last question, Mr. Chair, if I may. So now, is there a requirement for a fence around your property?
Yeah, there is a requirement for the fence, and we do have a fence that's being built. Well, that will be built once we have our building permits around the property. I was gonna say also that I wanted to send to Wendy and share with the committee some documents after the meeting. Probably send you guys a little package during the week, and it will include a basically our building plan. And it will also show the outside part of the building, which will define the fence around the building. The fence won't be around the whole property, but there will be a fence around the building with security gates and whatnot.
Okay, and sort of another, one more last question. Now, have you installed the new septic system? And is that what I see in front of the building, between the building and County Road 2? And the reason I ask the question is that it appears to me, if that's where the new septic tank is installed, that the septic bed will be very close and encroaching on county property. Does county know about that? It's a county road, as you know.
Yeah, it's a county road. From the design that we've had from our engineers, which we got approved by, I think it was Leeds and Grenville County, that issued out our septic permit. We reviewed everything, the distances and everything seemed perfectly fine. So we went ahead with the installation.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much. Appreciate answering my questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just one comment and maybe one or two small questions. Hussein, you referred to yourself as a healthcare professional. Does that mean that you're a doctor or?
Yes, I am a physician.
And the smells, I wrote down the quote because smells has been an issue that has been brought to me from Purple Farms. And I wrote down a quote, Nabi, and I just want to confirm that it's correct. You did say no odors at all.
At all. That's correct, yeah. And the reason for this is a lot of like obviously we've built a lot of buildings, and what a lot of people do is they will only use charcoal filters, and there's a lot of them that will exhaust the charcoal filters directly outside. And sometimes because of building material and some seals and some buildings not being sealed properly, there's some smells that do come out. However, we're not only using charcoal filters, we're using charcoal filters within the room in combination with UV filters, but we're also using HEPA filters all around the facility and inside the facility, which ensures that there's absolutely no smell that would be coming out of the facility.
That is very interesting to me. Have you checked on and addressed exactly what the needs will be for your hydro demand?
Yeah, we're currently dealing with that with Hydro One. So our electrical engineer has provided, Hydro One has provided us with a information sheet where we would fill in the loads and whatnot for the building. And right now, our electrical engineer filled out that sheet and we've submitted it to Hydro One. They're the ones that came and cut the power from the post to the building. And they're the one that will be reinstalling the power into the building. And there will be, there might be some sort of electrical upgrade, but we have many conversations with Hydro One, and I mean, they're very willing to work with us, and there won't be any issue for the power upgrade.
They will be able to supply the demand that you'll need.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when they were there, we were there a few times with them on the site and just looking at the transformers, at the electricity available around the building. They said there's absolutely no problem on that end.
Do you want to speak to that?
Well, yeah, they have not yet confirmed your load though, have they?
We confirm our load on our end. We're just waiting for their confirmation.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the reasons that I'm sure the deputy mayor is asking that question, because we know that they have very little load capacity, very little capacity left to supply load in that area where you're located. And so it'll be very interesting to see whether or not they have the ability, because of their limited infrastructure, to meet your load demands.
Right. Well, if I can speak on that, we did already have quite a substantial load of power coming into the building. The upgrade that we need to do is not, it's not a huge upgrade. So in all the talks that we've had with the technicians from Hydro One, you know, it's never been an issue.
Okay, so the building's already got load.
Good, sounds good.
Yeah, the building, I mean, when we first came into the building, there was like a crazy amount of panels, transformers, and there was already a pretty big amount of power coming in for that building, because I believe it had been used in the past for an industrial printing shop, right? So yeah, that's the type of activity that does demand quite a substantial load of electricity.
Good, and I think that's all. So does anyone have a follow-up at all for Nabi or Hussein while they're here? No, good. All right, looking forward to seeing your site plan. That would be at our September meeting. Is that anticipated?
I'm very hopeful.
We're very hopeful. Okay, we'll see you guys soon. Look forward to working with you.
Excellent. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us.
Good.
Thank you everyone for meeting with us. Have a great day.
Have a good night.
Have a great rest of the night.
All right, moving on to item 6A, the live portion, which is information item, and it's considerations for additional residential units. The Upper Canada Leeds Grenville staff report. Wendy, you want to give us a little?
Yes, definitely, Dr. Mayor. Just an information item for the committee. The counties have started a housing affordability task force made up from mayors from across the counties, including Prescott and Gananoque. The task force earlier this year asked the planning department of the county and the rest of the planners across the counties to do some brainstorming about how we can create or generate more affordable housing. One of the reports that came out of that brainstorm session was about additional residential units. In our official plan and in our draft zoning bylaw, we refer to them as second dwellings for separate dwelling units, or second dwelling units if they are, for lack of a term, like apartment units within an existing dwelling. So the manager of planning services, Sherry Mills, put together this report with feedback from planners from across the counties that made some recommendations. It's really timely for us because we're working towards new zoning bylaws. So there may be some things in here we want to consider. I can go through some of the recommendations if you'd like, or
Yeah, if you want to walk us through, that'd be fine.
there's trying to find the page on in the agenda package on page 16 of 72. There were some considerations from the counties for the rest of the municipalities, 4 of them. One was to consider amending or adding definitions for single detached, semi-detached, and townhouse dwellings to ensure it's clear that adding an additional residential unit into the primary dwelling does not change the dwelling unit type into another form of dwelling. I think in our draft zoning bylaw, this is something Novatech could look at with us. If you were to change the definition for a single detached, or if you were to add another residential unit in a single detached dwelling, I think it wouldn't meet the definition of single detached dwelling. It might change it into a duplex or a semi. It might be considered an apartment unit in there. So that's something I could work with Novatech on. Maybe we need to change the definition there. They also can say to consider adding a definition for additional residential unit to make it clear that it's a dwelling unit which is subordinate to the principal dwelling unit and located on the same lot. And I mentioned before, we call our second dwellings or second dwelling units. Now, interesting to know that we would, in our new draft new zoning bylaw, we would allow someone to not just have a second dwelling unit as an apartment within the house, but also an additional residential unit, like as a second unit. So there could be 3 dwellings on one lot. So second dwelling unit might not be an appropriate term to use if there's going to be a third one. It's no longer a second one. We can look at these definitions with no restriction. Another recommendation by the counties is to consider updating zoning bylaws to permit additional residential units in principal dwelling units and in accessory structures as per the Planning Act. We are doing this in our draft new zoning bylaw, so we are already following that recommendation. Number 3, I'm on page 17, I think, of 72, was to consider a maximum gross floor area for additional residential units. I think our draft new zoning bylaw considers this already. We are allowing the second dwelling or second dwelling unit to be up to 50% of the primary dwelling unit, up to a maximum of 80 meters squared if it's in a residential zone, or up to 95 meters squared if it's in a rural or agricultural zone. The 4th recommendation is for parking requirements. They are asking us to consider waiving the number of parking spaces required in some denser urban downtown areas or in certain designations like Main Street Commercial, Main Street Commercial or Main Street Commercial Residential. Also consider tandem parking, which I think our draft zoning bylaw is silent on. We don't say yes or no to tandem parking or stacked parking. And also some zoning bylaws have considered not allowing a parking space for the second dwelling unit in the front yard, so that we don't have a whole front yard as a parking lot. So most municipalities already require 1 parking space per residential unit. Our draft new zoning bylaw does as well. For our Main Street commercial areas, our draft new zoning bylaw, I think our current one does as well, does say, it doesn't do those other requirements that they suggest, but it does say that in a commercial zone, the parking space can be within 100 meters of the site for MC and MCR zones. So even if they couldn't accommodate parking on that lot, if they had an agreement with a neighboring lot to allow parking there, then that would be satisfactory.
Okay, before I start, I just want to get something straight in my head. So if we had an unopened subdivision that had like an R3 that would allow townhomes or row houses, right? In theory, there could be 4 or 6 of those, and then each one of those units could have a secondary unit in the backyard, and each one of those could also have a secondary unit inside. So if there was 6, ultimately they could have 18 on that same small block of space.
Technically,
If a builder hasn't built it, the potential for a builder to build it is there.
yes, but still subject to the provisions of the zoning bylaw, like maximum lot coverage. So they'd have to be awfully spacious townhouse lots if they were going to have that many extra units in there.
But I just want to make sure that I've got it right in my head.
Yeah.
That's okay. Do you want to speak to this first? Because you're assuming you're on this task force.
Well, maybe I can provide a little bit of context around this, because this particular staff report was discussed at the last housing, what are we calling this task force?
Housing affordability.
Housing Affordability Task Force. And let me say that at this point, members of county council, the 10 mayors actually the 13 mayors, because Brockville, Prescott, and Gananoque are there, are in various stages of agreement on various issues. And Wendy has just highlighted for us 4 of the critical issues. But the overriding critical issue to mayors is that there's a concept that all of us would bring our zoning bylaws into congruence with each other. I can pretty well tell you that that's not going to happen. Because even if the 10 mayors in the counties decided to bring their 10 township zoning bylaws into congruence with each other, we have no mechanism other than goodwill for Prescott, Brockville, and Gananoque to come to the party with us. And that I don't think is going to happen. I mean, that's almost for sure. So there's a certain amount of independence, even being, and as Wendy's report indicates, there's a certain amount of independence even within the 10 township mayors. So if we go through the 4 major issues that Wendy has raised, I mean, and I think we should talk about them. And, you know, I'm going to tell you that in the absence of direction from this committee, I'm going to speak on the basis of my experience, and I'll be answering these issues on the basis of my experience and on the basis of what I think is best for our township until I receive direction from this committee. So the first issue that she raises is the question of whether we would permit 3 residential units on the same lot. So think about this. And the deputy mayor has just alluded to it, and he's hit it right on the head. So you've got a 4-plex, a quadplex, that's a permitted use on a lot. You can have an additional residential unit in each one of those units and an additional one in the back for a 3.
12.
Yeah, 12 now. So my feeling is that this bill 108, which allowed one, if you look on page 14, you'll see how it's articulated there. They say in 2019, Bill 108 allowed 1 additional residential unit in the main dwelling and 1 additional dwelling unit in an accessory structure for a total of 3. So just because that act allows it, there is no reason that we as a township need to acquiesce to that. So my feeling is that if we're going to have these additional residential units, they should be within the main dwelling and not a separate structure. Now that's my personal feeling. I'd like to see the committee provide some direction on that.
Can I comment quick?
Yeah.
Before we go on, I completely agree with that. But however, have we not, I mean, would it not still be considered a tiny home? And have we not put it into our, the tiny home as a secondary use though? Have we not put that into our
Well, a tiny home is a separate
official
structure.
plan?
A tiny home is a separate structure. Do we want to allow these separate structures as a second structure, potentially providing a 3rd additional residential unit on the same piece of property?
But have we not allowed that in our official plan to staff?
Well, Wendy's saying that our existing zoning bylaw contemplates that.
Our new draft does, for sure.
Our new draft.
Does our OP not recognize the use for?
It may recognize it, but it's up to the zoning bylaw. It may recognize it in the official plan as a policy, but the zoning bylaw provides the direction.
So now's the time if we want to
Limit it.
find that and limit that second, okay.
But what,
And again,
Just
you know,
keep open discussion, just don't talk over each other. This is a good one to talk on, so.
well, I look at it from the point of view, there's a big difference between what would happen in the hamlets, and I'm talking about Spencerville, Johnstown, Cardinal, and what might happen on County Road 22, you know, or County Road 21, where we've got a lot, let's say it's a 3-acre lot, and we've already accommodated one of these where we had a fairly good acreage with a single family or a single residential dwelling, and we permitted a tiny home within so many feet of that main structure, but as a secondary structure, right? And I can't remember, Hyman Road? Was it? Hyman
Yeah,
Road.
no, that's right.
Yeah, so I see a big difference there between how we do deal with it in the hamlets and how we would deal with it in the residential area or in the rural area. I see.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, just a question to Wendy, and it's regarding, do we not allow now for what we call as a granny flat as a separate building?
Yeah, a garden suite is, I think it needs a zoning bylaw amendment. Maybe it depends on what zone that you're in.
I would be talking more or less residential, R2.
But it's not a separate structure.
It can have to be attached.
The new one, I think,
Well,
our
no.
new ZBL is,
That's my question. My question is,
allows it.
do we allow for a separate structure for what we call a granny flat or a granny suite? And that terminology may be different.
I think that's actually the
But
terminology.
here's the point, and I don't think we should be chasing our tails. We shouldn't be too interested in what our draft zoning bylaw says. We should be providing direction to Wendy and the planner as to what we want it to
Sure.
say.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, and
That's-
I think I agree with that, but let's go around and around here a little bit and see if we can come up with something, because I think, I think we're slowly getting
And
there.
and actually, that's the crutch of my question is, if we already allow a separate structure for what they refer to as granny units,
So in our zoning bylaw, we refer to them as garden suites, not permitted in the residential
Not
second
permitted.
density zone. Yes, permitted in the rural zone.
Right, which
Okay,
is exactly
all right,
what you're
thank
saying.
you.
Yeah, but again, we're talking about suites. Suite is not a separate structure. A suite is not a separate structure.
Can you find that and make, just for
I'm gonna find
clarity
your
to make sure,
definition.
I think I completely agree with that interpretation, but can we get some further clarity on that?
I have the definition. Means a temporary detached single housing unit containing sanitary and kitchen facilities that is accessory to an existing permanent residential structure, and that is designed to be portable, but does not include a mobile home, a travel trailer, or any other type of recreational vehicle, also known as a granny flat. Designed to be portable.
Designed to be portable.
Because they are meant for caring for a family member who may not be with us for a very long time. So I think they're meant to be temporary in nature, 10 years or 20 years, and then.
Do we have any?
And so I appreciate you correcting me on that because I had the wrong concept. So thanks very much for that.
And so,
Well,
do we have any, and how do we tax those the same?
any small, if you don't mind,
No,
Mr. Chairman,
no,
just jumping in here,
Sure.
is any small structure, we'll say 500 square feet, is movable. I mean, they drop them in the township all the time,
When they move from out of Ottawa.
or Brockville,
Yeah, fair enough, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, your definition of movable. Yes.
Also in the rural zone where they are permitted, it needs a temporary use bylaw, provided all health unit requirements for on-site private services have been fulfilled. The temporary use bylaw, I think, can only be 10 years, but can be renewed for an additional 10 years. Could be temporary, maybe if it doesn't have a foundation, would be considered temporary.
Correct. Okay.
Through the chair.
Yeah.
So would that would be the secondary building, though? You can't have a secondary building in addition to that, can we, or is that?
No, that's the secondary building.
That's the secondary building.
I think that by allowing secondary dwelling units, there's no longer a need for a garden suite.
Right,
There's no
right.
situation where a garden suite, a temporary use bylaw for a garden suite is better than just building a second dwelling unit.
That's exactly what I was trying to say, right? So.
And by the way, this is one thing that comes out in Wendy's report that is a big issue at the county housing affordability task force. We got to get to some standard definitions here, so that we're all working from the same definitions. And I think the mayors will coalesce around that concept. And one of the concepts is that we call these things secondary residential, or some, Wendy, you had some wording here on one of your pages. Secondary dwelling units to reflect an additional unit was permitted either in the main dwelling or in an accessory structure. So we're using the word second, I think the concept was that we would all use the words secondary dwelling unit, not granny suites and granny flats, et cetera, We just would stick with that one definition. I think that was one of the things that keeps coming up, because even I get confused as what the heck's happening here. But one thing is for sure, we want that secondary dwelling unit to be an accessory use to the main unit. In other words, smaller than. And I know in our drafts that we've got here, and including in Wendy's, we say 50% of the size of the main unit. And my feeling is that it should be even more aggressive and say no more than 40% of the main unit. So if the main unit is 1,000 square feet, then this thing can't be more than 400. And by use square feet, not meters, by the way, but that's just.
Now, you're talking about a secondary unit,
Yep,
like a small tiny house outside.
yep.
So, but you're against me having one in Johnstown.
Well, I think that's touchy.
I got a big
And,
backyard.
I didn't say I'm for or against
No,
it, Steve.
but I have a
What I'm
big
saying is I
backyard.
think we gotta treat them different.
I can't have a rec room because of my basement.
Yep,
So, but I could put a nice tiny home out there. I have the parking space, I have the sewer, and I have the water together.
no, you don't have sewer and water. You've got a septic
I
and a
got
field.
septic and water that I gotta hook up to. That's part of the mandate, right? Use the same water and sewer to hook up.
Yeah, now the one on Hyman Road, we want them to use the same septic tank and the same
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, same, and that's the way, they're all stated in here, as far as I can read.
Yeah,
So what I don't understand, I have the parking, I mean, with yours, like, I like I know what you're saying, the fourplex. But you never would have the parking spot.
No.
For a
Well,
fourplex.
and then if you read the parking part of this.
Yeah, one parking spot per unit,
Per 3 units.
well, per unit, so you never get three in a fourplex, it just wouldn't happen.
Through the chair, in addition to that, one thing we talked about when we were talking about, say, I suppose, a subdivision with the traffic and the as well, 3 times as many cars potentially. And I mean, you're not gonna expect, unless you have a really crafty developer who's gonna say, I'm gonna put 3 units in every one of these units, and you make it even more valuable to them. But, the traffic itself is gonna be a huge problem, especially in some of the proposed ones out there, right? So.
Like, if I can cut in for 1 sec. I get that there's a housing crunch, and especially for affordable housing. But it seems to me like we've got 2 on the record subdivisions in Cardinal that for some reason the builders decide not to build or choose not to build. And I think as council, we've been more than willing to address concerns that builders might have to try to get the shovels in the ground. But then this seems really aggressive to me in a long-term 20 or 30-year approach to affordable housing. It really feels like a knee-jerk, like changing an R1 to an R3 where you could add, more townhome style homes and more affordability through addressing the market that way. Do we really need in Cardinal a 4-plex that has the potential to be a 12-plex? I just question for this township the long-term planning approach with the need for this.
I'm right with you, and I agree with 100%.
It seems like this is a Toronto solution in a rural area. And I get maybe it has some merit in Rockville, possibly Prescott, but like this seems like seems over. I'd have a hard time supporting this. So,
Well, but we don't know what we're supporting on, because all we got here is a number of concepts. And so that's what I say, I think our issue is to sort through these concepts and decide what's best for our township.
Yeah.
Forget about what we can do and what do we want to do.
yeah, like to me, encouraging development, sure. Cutting red tape to do that, and how to get plans of subdivision approved faster, so that developers can get shovels in the ground quicker. Make a lot of sense to me, but putting this kind of density in an area that's rural, that has with no parking, and thinking that people aren't going to have cars when there's really no modes of transportation, very few grocery stores, very few amenities, seems, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like proper planning to me.
No, and I think if you're,
Struggle with that.
I think if you're gonna have, like, I disagree with one parking space per unit. I think if you've got a main building with an additional residential unit incorporated into that building, then you should have 2 parking spaces for the main building and 1 for the additional residential unit. That's 3.
Yeah.
Now, if you incorporate that additional residential unit and Steve does an add-on to his house, that's one way, or he may do it in terms of a separate little building behind, but he can't do it both ways,
Well, and this, he can.
right? Well, these are only concepts.
Yeah, right, fair enough. But you need direction, you're asking for direction from this committee, on how we would like to proceed, so.
And I know Wendy needs that direction for the planner.
Sure, so we're certainly beating this up with 3 of us talking. Let's hear some more from other people, so somebody else. Do you wanna go?
Well, I guess I just wanted to just make a comment halfway through what you were saying
Sure.
about we have the subdivisions ready and planned and drawn out, and they're not being acted upon, and we're extending things, southeast of Johnstown. I think there was something a couple years ago that this committee extended a subdivision plan. I don't remember, but then you go in and saying we're cutting red tape for developers. This is the kind of thing that gets overlooked when things get rushed, though. And I don't know if we should kind of use the term cutting red tape for developers loosely like that, because they take advantage of things, because they're cookie cuttering this all over the province, and they could see something like this and then get it passed quickly and then take advantage of it. And then we get into a situation like David Street later on where now we know what could happen, but we didn't do anything because we're trying to appease the developer without really twisting the arm of the people who already have subdivisions in place planned. Just generally commenting about that.
Well, don't mistake what I said. I'm not attempting to add 8 more units to David Street, right?
I understood what you were
Like
saying, but just.
Yeah, I don't like it as much as you don't like it. So, but what I think my comments are is to try to make it easier for builders to build on appropriate lots with appropriate services in areas that are appropriate, but not adding this to those areas, right? Talking about turning R1 to R2 or R3, making it easier that way for them to get it done, and getting those records of subdivision through easier and quicker for them. It takes a considerable amount of time for builders to actually get the approval to get new subdivisions open. Trying to find ways that they can get there a little bit quicker will solve the housing crisis. To me, not this. For me, this is
Not an affordable housing crisis. Sorry.
I mean, you're not wrong, but I think the bigger problem is,
It's affordable.
is beyond the scope of these walls in this building here, and the fact that, there's lower and lower incentive for people to get into the landlord business, to be perfectly honest. So, solve that problem first, and you might have a different conversation, but, that's where you're seeing more of units go for sale and then people not renting as much anymore, or trying to do other things we're going to talk about down the road in this meeting with regards to short-term rentals instead, because you get the same bang for your buck when you're not committed by the same rule that you're bound to in a landlord-tenant agreement, for instance. So I think there's different things at play there, but
Well, I think, but that conversation, not to cut you off, sorry.
yeah, that's fine.
But that conversation has a lot of merit in this conversation as well. They certainly morph together when you're talking about that, because while the intention might be to solve the I want to call it lower income, but the affordable housing issue, you might end up creating even a bigger issue for short-term rentals with an approach like this.
Yeah, well, and if, to your point, and that's where I was trying to go with as well, is if we do, and again, I haven't decided, we don't have enough data to decide, but let's just say that you had 4 units and you managed to get 8 units out of it, because some people actually have the 3 and some people just have the 1. You're going to create a bit of a pardon if there's some term, sort of a bit of a slow approach to that neighborhood, and that's going to instead of building more affordable houses and making the incentive there to build them properly, you're going to have these housing situations where you're going to have 3 people living in backyards and stuff like that, and I think it's going to be harmful to the community's mentality as well, the culture in the community as well when you do those kind of things. So
yeah, and I when I think too, I think especially in a planning committee, I mean, we often think the Bill 108 seems like a knee jerk to me to a substantial crisis that's here. But look, I like to look at it through the lens of the 20-year, 20, 30 year thing. And we have properties in Cardinal for sure, where there's 2 properties built on one lot, and there's, issues with severability and things like that. And I can't help but to think that, are we creating a problem with this approach for 10 years, 20 years down the line?
Guaranteed you are. As soon as you permit a second structure on the same lot, you're creating problems.
And we don't have the problem really now. We're trying to clean them up often, and
yeah, and I guess the last thing that I had written down here, what I was
sorry.
it's okay, it's okay, it's good.
Yeah,
It's good dialogue, and I like the way it's
fluid.
going
Yeah,
anyway.
I like the fluid.
But and I don't have any experience in this regard, but I was talking with somebody within the last couple of months anyways, and they were saying, other than us saying it's okay to do it, a lot of banks aren't going to love it anyways and still won't be able to, so I don't know what implications that has. And like I said, it was more of an ad hoc statement, and I don't have any experience, or if anybody else has any experience, but banks not necessarily going to fund, I'm having my main building plus a second one built as I built my house, and they're going to like that or not. And then so that creates another issue of people who build it without getting the
Yes,
funding.
but one thing that is working that does address affordable housing is a situation where the builder builds a 2,000 square foot structure. All right, and the main living quarter of that structure is 1,200 square feet. And then there's an additional residential unit built into the design of 800 square feet. Now, there's only one owner, and that owner rents out the 800 square feet, which helps with the mortgage and gets rented out at what could be, depending on the owner of the building, it could be at an affordable rent. It could be for the mother-in-law. It could be for the old mother, or the grandmother. It could be any kind of use, but there's only one person in charge, and that's the original owner. That's the kind of thing that I think will not cause problems. And maybe it's, maybe these 800 square foot units are the units that the kids coming out of college rent as individual apartments. There's none of them right now in the township, none.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
There are some. I shouldn't say there are none. There are some. But those kinds of things do address affordable housing.
But then it's under the Landlord Tenant Act.
Now that's
The person, if I owned it and you rent it, and I want you out,
you got a problem.
hello, if you're smashing my walls and
Yeah. You got a
Yell
problem.
and screech it.
And that's what Chris was referring, I think that's what you're
Yeah,
referring to. But, you know, as many times as that issue has been brought up, and you know, I mean, I'm gonna tell you one thing right now, I've gone head to head with the minister on that one. And said, do you not understand that the reason that private enterprise will not build apartment buildings is because they don't wanna deal with your act? It's your act, change your act, but they won't deal with that.
But this just still, like everything we're talking about in this, a secondary unit, whether it's in the house or built outside, would still be under landlord tenant act, right? Like nobody's
know.
able to buy the unit that's in your backyard.
No, it'd be all under one deed.
So it was,
You have
It's
two,
separate, right? But
you would have two buildings on one deed.
Well, see, but that's again what we have to decide.
No,
Because
I'm just saying.
who
because of
owns
the-
that secondary structure?
well, don't we already have it decided with the granny suite that's already in our
No,
temporary
because,
granny suite?
no, because we didn't deal with that issue. When we permitted the one on Hyndman Road, the lady owned the property. And she was going to permit, I believe it was her sister, whatever it was, to put the teeny tiny home on her property. But the sister was already gonna own that secondary structure, as I understood it. Now, again, I could have that wrong.
It's not separate.
No.
It's separate.
It's not
No way of deeding
separate,
it separate.
right? Right.
What's that, John?
There'd be no way of deeding it separate.
No, it can't be deeded separate.
Right. And
No,
they're
not at all.
And
He
as of
doesn't
right
own it.
now, they're not severable. But I mean,
No, but so now what happens if the person in the main dwelling gets into a pissing match with the person that owns the teeny tiny home that's located this far away on the same septic and on the same water?
She doesn't own that though.
she
That
doesn't.
little tiny home.
She doesn't.
The one that owns the main home owns a tiny home.
On Simon?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. So maybe that's one thing that we want to instruct our planner. Where there is a separate structure, that structure itself must be owned by the main,
right.
It has to be.
And it would have to be, I would think.
no, not
To
necessarily.
staff,
Well, how would you ever get it separate?
hold to staff.
No, you don't need a severance.
The idea was that they're not severable, correct? Does anybody,
They would
like
need
when
to
we
be
went
on
through this,
shared-
I'm sure I remember this
They would need
correctly.
to be on shared servicing so that they could not be separate.
So, but if they were able to get, so the one then on Hyman that we're referring to, if there's a new owner, situation will change at some point, there's a new owner, and that person wants to sever that, the only thing that would stop them from being able to sever is the ability to have water and septic. So if they drilled a well and put a septic in, there would be consideration
They have no
for
road
severance.
frontage.
Or
You would have
size.
the frontage.
They have no frontage.
Yeah, so today road frontage is the lot, is there enough lot size? I think in our draft new zoning bylaw, there is a requirement that they can't be more than 6 meters apart. The idea being to keep them close together, so
They can't be severed.
reduces the.
Yeah, and I think we should make it clear in our zoning bylaw that these are non-severable.
Can you not lease a part of your land for a 99-year lease to somebody and they're able to then build a building at their own dollars if we don't put something in here about that? I don't know. I mean, I'm not a land expert or a lawyer, but I do think there's still a loophole now that we've had this discussion that we don't think we talked about in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, two people can be the best of friends today,
Yeah.
and I say, oh yeah, you can put your teeny tiny home over there, and you can tie into my septic, and you can tie into my water. And 6 months from now, we can be like this.
Mm-hmm.
And unless I own that, I got no way of getting that out of there.
But you gotta get them out under the landlord tenant act. I
Oh,
would
do
think.
you?
I don't know.
If you're renting, you
If
do.
you're renting.
Maybe I'm not renting the building to them, maybe I'm only renting the land to them.
Good question.
Does staff have
Good
any
point.
comments to that end? Is it possible for somebody else to own the teeny tiny home? Or does it have to be owned by the law, or by the land?
Whatever our binding, it's again, whatever our zoning bylaw says.
I have an idea, but I don't think I'm smart enough to
Okay,
comment.
all right, so let's try to, good discussion so far, and it's going on quite a while. And I know do you want direction then?
Well, I'm looking to see what consensus arrives from this discussion.
All right, so Mr. Modler, we haven't heard from you.
I support
what you're saying in that I don't see how this proposal addresses affordable housing at all. And I also don't like the idea that you can have one dwelling, then within that if I understand that, within that dwelling, another dwelling, and then decide I want to put a second separated dwelling in my backyard. No, I don't like that idea at all. And I don't see how it addresses affordable housing.
Intensification.
Yeah, and from a public health perspective, I don't see it as even being safe, having that many people living that close together, given today's, health concerns.
Counselor, you look like you.
Well, I think it's a simple matter that my big question was when I looked at it, they want to change it. Basically, the word was they want to change it from secondary dwelling unit to accessory dwelling unit instead of secondary dwelling unit, which to me says no number on just accessory dwelling units. I think secondary dwelling unit is what we need to stick with. We're basically saying two. Either you have a big enough lot and the services, you put a tiny house in the back if you want, or you make an apartment in your house. If you got I'll use my house for example, 4,500 square feet. I got 2 kitchens and stuff in it. I could easily divide my house tomorrow. I could divide it, have 2 families, make it into a duplex in $5,000. I could change it to a duplex, but that's not permitted right at the time. So I think that for a family, that works. We've got a lot in the township right now that have built on their homes for granny suites, and now it's changed hands and they're rented. We'll give an example on one right in Gary Owen where I'll use her name, she wouldn't mind, Steve Tribbett. Russ died, Sue bought the place, and Graham Birchall had the granny suite on for his mother, and they sold it to her, and now she has a friend of hers renting that little granny suite living in it. Helps her with her finance, it helps her, she's got a finance, they're good, get along good, but the whole crunch of affordable housing, and I'm like the mayor, I've been in the rental business too. You're never gonna get affordable housing as long as they got that landlord-tenant act in place until they change it.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get affordable housing because I know people that, our ex-mayor was 2 years getting a person out of one in Cardinal. We never got a cent for 2 years.
Oh, it's terrible, you're right.
It's ridiculous.
My last tenant.
Nobody's gonna build. Who's
My
gonna
last
buy?
tenant owes me $6,000.
Yeah.
And, and not half of that is just to clean up the mess. The other half is rent that didn't get paid.
And you're absolutely right. And if we allow someone to put an additional dwelling on their property, that somewhat penalizes the person that has a large enough lot that he can sever that, so a unit can be built legally on that lot. So this way, we're sort of penalizing the person that maintains a larger lot and can sever it by just allowing, with this, just allowing a secondary will.
Okay. We've got another one that's gonna get just as
Yeah.
gonna be just as healthy of a discussion. When do you have to deal with this?
Well, we meet every month,
And
generally on the 3rd Wednesday of the month.
I mean, do you want firm direction, or, I mean, you've read the table.
Yeah, here's what I hear. I hear what I think is developing consensus around the concept of using the term secondary dwelling unit. I think I hear that, which would be an additional residential unit. It's a secondary dwelling unit, it's an additional residential dwelling. Here's what I think I'm hearing. The limit would be 2. It's either inside the main building or it's a separate structure. I don't know how you limit that to whether it's, maybe you limit it according to the size of the lot. I don't know how you do it so that we can accommodate Steve, but not this guy over here who's got a smaller lot. Okay, but that's what I'm hearing. And the other thing that I'm hearing, I think, is that once that second structure appears, that lot becomes non-severable. Period. By definition, it becomes non-severable. Forget about all the other constraints that are already in place, but our zoning bylaw clearly indicates it's a non-severable situation, period. End of discussion.
Sort of.
Now, I think I'm hearing those three things. Maybe there's other things. I don't hear anything yet about, I don't hear an emerging consensus about parking.
Well, it's gonna take care of itself because you have to have one parking spot for each dwelling.
But that's
That's
not
not
enough.
enough.
Some of us feel that that's not enough.
Well, then it's gonna, if you need, say, two, then you're really gonna tighten it up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, 2 for the main and 1 for this accessory dwelling.
Yeah, okay, 3, that's fine.
Most families have 2 cars.
Yeah.
And then I presume that your rental unit is gonna be 2 cars too, though. So now you're looking at 4 cars.
Well, not when you get down to 800 square feet. 800 square feet generally becomes a single individual, but it can be a couple.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
a
and
couple.
you're talking, I mean, the ultimate goal for this is affordable housing, so it could even be a family.
Yep.
Parking is a problem, for
Well,
sure.
and I mean, in Johnstown, for example, we possibly be having cars, more cars
On the
parked on the
street.
road, on the street, on
Yeah,
a
for
bus.
sure.
Snow plane becomes fun, things like that. Right?
Well, I mean, we have an example that I won't name, but in Cardinal, where we've allowed a duplex, when it came through, we really didn't address all of the parking concerns, and consistently, there's 6 cars parked, or more at times, even 7 when we're driving by, and they're backing onto the highway too. I mean, there's certainly a lot of considerations, and those parking considerations were brought forward even then, but they were sort of discounted. So as though more of those places are built, certainly we've pushed to make sure, this committee for sure, it's been mentioned where, two car parking per each unit. So
That incident we had there, that lady wanted to rent, and she didn't have enough parking. Remember? And you wanted to use the rink.
Yeah.
For parking.
we don't want to, I just think that this creates a problem. Number 4.
Well, this is parking's a trouble in all the cities and stuff, so we don't really want to get in the same parking situations. Like I'll use my daughter's places she's had in Toronto. We drove around the street and tried to find a place you could park overnight on the street, but the units have absolutely zero parking out. And we don't want to get in the situation. We've got situations now that exist. We don't want to create more of them.
And I think, like for me, the way I look at this is Bill 108 is great for Oshawa. And this type of development is fantastic in Pickering and Oshawa and Scarborough and wherever, where they have transit. You can hop on the bus, you can hop on the GO train, you can hop on that, but you can't hop on the GO train in Cardinal, or you can't hop on it in Hyman Road, or you can't hop on it here on Bennett Street. Like it just seems like it's a big city solution to a small town problem. So I don't know. Not a huge fan.
Well, I mean, it is a big city problem more than it's not that it's not a problem out here, but it's certainly, more of a scaled up issue in the cities, right? So
It's gonna be more of a problem here because the people in the city just can't afford to live in the city.
yeah, well, and working from
And
home
you
is-
can see from this, more and more people are leaving the city to come out here to the country. So it is gonna be a problem. We're gonna have a problem if we don't deal with it, no question.
Well, and to me, I see the ultimate question is, is this the solution, or is, looking at the way that we plan for the next 20 years, considering, R2 and R3s, where normally maybe it's R1s, right? And in the areas that have those services, and we, looking at Meadowland subdivision, do we want to do the intensification there and make it easier for a builder to build there, where they have water and sewer, and there isn't a school, so that causes an issue, but
It's great to say to build and be ready. Is it build and affordable to a young family? Like affordable housing is not affordable $1,000 home. It's just not affordable.
Sure.
So
Neither is a $30,000 building lot. that's what we're seeing everywhere. And that's, I think, why those developments aren't going forward, because people don't have $30,000 plus 300,000 for a house on it.
Right.
I don't know right now, and there's a third card where you find a $30,000 lot.
Yeah, double it.
Yeah,
Build on it if you find it.
50 to 60,000
Okay.
out in the country on the side.
So bring it back in here again. What,
Both beside us.
did everybody have a go on parking?
Well, I read 2 + 1 or 2 + 2.
2 at least, or 3 at least.
Two, not two for sure. One, you gotta have parking. If you're gonna have a house and you're gonna rent it out, or if you have an accessory building and you're gonna rent it out, you have a granny suite and you're gonna have people in there, you gotta have at least one parking spot for them.
But that's.
The main unit
Is 2.
should be 2, and an accessory is 1. It's up to the people that come in to that accessory building to sort out their own parking.
Yeah, I know, but they can't sort it out if they don't have spots.
If they have one spot, then find another spot for the second one. I had to do that when my daughter got a car and I didn't have parking for her. She had to go and find a spot to park her car, and she was able to find a garage that she could rent. And that was on her.
Pretty hard in number 2 highway in Johnstown.
There's one issue on the park we didn't look at, but we mentioned it in there is tandem park or stack parking. Right now, our bylaw calls for parking places is side by side.
Mhm.
And there is places that we allowed for secondary building. We could allow 1 parking spot, but it could be a 2 parking spot if we allow tandem parking.
There's stacked parking right now in the village of Cardinal, right on Dundas Street. There's stacked parking
Yeah.
there.
People do it all the time.
Our bylaw
Doesn't recognize it as
doesn't
allowed.
recognize that for a new
Defines, sorry,
But-
stack parking.
one in front of.
Instead of this, like this.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant.
No.
But again,
That's in Ottawa.
Fair
No,
point,
because
fair
I know some of the condos in Ottawa.
Yeah, you're right.
Sure.
It's like an elevator. You put your car in there and then it moves. So.
Okay, let me keep this
Cardinal had
going.
that.
So, did you say what you thought for parking so that he can get some
Well, I'm saying with 2 + 1, but the one
consideration for that?
could be
2.
Yeah, if you got a double line.
if you got a double laneway going in.
Yeah, I certainly have no issue with that.
I mean,
So,
parking can be just the width of the driveway.
what about you, Mr. Mother?
I agree, 2 for the main and at minimum 1, even 2 for the additional.
Connor?
I'd like to see 2 per unit, because people are using that second one for their boat, their RV, shipping container.
That's a good point, too. Yeah,
And then we're running into,
well, they're not actually parking in it.
yeah,
Or an RV.
Company.
Garage.
company vehicle.
Kingston cleared that up in their zoning bylaw. They forbid any boats being parked in the parking.
Yeah.
Yep.
Side yard.
absolutely.
And there's places that don't allow RVs.
I just want to be clear for me, and I know you're going to go in and have the discussion for secondary units, and I'm all for the attached secondary unit, but I do not like the concept of having a secondary residential dwelling that isn't attached to the primary dwelling.
No detached.
I'm not a fan, no, not in any way, shape or form. I think I just see it as creating long-term issues for this township to deal with on a long-term basis.
Say that again, Kurt.
So I'm all for having like an apartment, like the mayor described before, having an apartment built onto the home,
The
the
existing home.
existing footprint, the existing home, making a renovation and allowing that to be
Okay.
a secondary residence or a rental unit or whatever it may be. But adding in a new bylaw that allows for a second home, basically to be built on an existing residential lot as a secondary use to the primary home that's not attached, I'm not in not in favor of that at all.
That's not our plan though, right?
Yep.
I thought that was in our plan, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's in our plan or not, I'm still not a fan of it.
Okay,
Okay,
we
go
don't
ahead.
have that in the residential.
Okay, but now listen to, where do we take that argument? Because I mean, the mayor, the deputy mayor has staked out a position here. And that position is contrary to what we've already done. Now, the question is, do we support that position? That's the question. Because if you support that position, that ends the whole discussion of a teeny tiny home.
And I don't think we should.
What doesn't, it only supports, it only eliminates a teeny tiny home as a non-primary use. You can still have a teeny tiny home as a primary use, correct?
Mhm.
Right. So I'm saying.
As a primary use.
As a primary use, I'm saying eliminate it as the secondary use. So
Eliminate it
having
as a
one in your
secondary.
backyard. I think our bylaw, the way our bylaw is allowing a granny suite that's temporary, that has a 10-year permit, shows, forward thinking. It shows that we're addressing the issue as the issue may be for now. It's temporary. And it basically gives you a 10-year permit to do it, which deals with a lot of the issues of home ownership, not making it a 30-year issue, where there's something that's permanently built there.
Okay, but now you're sucking and blowing at the same time. Because you, two minutes ago, you said you're opposed to anything that isn't fastened to the main dwelling. But now you just said
No,
you'll agree with it provided that it's got certain certain limitations.
no. So maybe you misunderstand. I'm saying that I'm against the way that this is written, and I'm saying the way that we had it in the original, like making changes that make them permanent structures, completely against. Like this will make it a permanent structure. Like the one we did on Hyman Road that's a permanent structure.
No, I didn't think it was.
Yeah, it's a permanent structure. It's a permanent home.
How big is it?
It's a permanent home.
Permanent home.
No, I think
It's
it's
not-
totally movable.
No,
No, it's not.
no.
Well, I mean,
Anything
define totally movable. I mean, you can bring in railway tracks and go underneath it and lift it back up and move it, but
Yeah.
that's not, it's built as a permanent home.
So that is where I wanted to bring this. Why would we be against that scenario, permanent or not? Because, well, I think the deputy mayor is saying is that he is against that unless it had a 10-year limit on it with the ability to reject it. But then if you do say you got 6 months to move it because the council says you can't have it anymore, we've changed our mind. I don't think that's a good position. On the other hand, I'd say steer clear of it because on an agricultural zone, we talked about this months ago where we are, well, actually that meeting, we need to allow farming communities to be able to build on their property. So I'd also like to extend further, we should be able to do that on a rural property. We should be able to do that on a sizable zone, a sizable lot within a different zone. I don't think removing the ability to create a second dwelling altogether, permanent or temporary, is a good, it's anti-intensification, really.
So just so that I'm clear on it, so then you're for intensification as long as it's not in the built up areas. You'd rather have the intensification in the rural areas.
No, allow it both, allow it everywhere, that it makes sense. But what you're saying is if you have a lot, you have a house, you can make the house bigger but not have a separate building. You're going against the whole section where we allow a second building if it's attached to the septic and attached to the same well and it's within meters, use the same driveway, all those things. But I think you're kind of reducing it all to you're against that.
If you're asking me if I'm for a secondary dwelling permanent that can stay there for an unlimited amount of time, I think the answer is yes.
You're against that?
Yes.
Okay, but provided that secondary dwelling is movable with conditions, term conditions, you'd be okay with that?
Well, I think then you're going to get into the next discussion, which is Airbnbs and rental units and short-term accommodations, and my fear for what is a good intention of creating, like Connor said, an ability for a farmer to create a secondary unit for their child to live there. And then when the child moves on and buys something else, that it ends up being a short-term rental and a short-term accommodation. And is that really what, what, something that we want?
Okay,
Is that a direction we want to go in?
Tourism, yes.
But let's not open that discussion yet, but it takes me to a different, the next part of the
let's
discussion.
open that discussion and shut the door.
Well,
No short-term rentals.
It's next on the agenda.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know, and I
Okay.
think it's just as complex as this is, so.
But I'm confused, where are we going with this now?
Well, I think that we figured out that we don't know, or at least in my eyes, I don't know.
Because I thought, okay,
If I'm the only one who feels that way, I'm the only one that feels that
No,
way,
but
and
what
I
we
don't have a problem with
propose-
that.
what we propose for the second small dwelling on a property right now is if it's allowed, as long as it goes into the septic and water,
Same lot.
right?
And not severable.
And not severable, but is what we're, proposing, does it have that temporary tag to it, or can it be permanent?
No, it's permanent.
No, no, let's make it temporary. Let's make it
Well,
temporary.
you're gonna make people move?
Well,
Yeah, you got that right.
No, I
We're
don't.
not, no. We're not making somebody move. When they're finished the use, the structure that they were in moves. It doesn't get rented as an Airbnb. It doesn't get rented to Joe Blow from down the street. The person that was in it, that caused it to be located there, now, is this making any sense? Maybe it's not. Think about it. The homeowner put the little building there. It's temporary. It can be moved.
And it can be converted to a workshop.
And it can be converted to a
So,
workshop. But
When
wait a
when
minute,
the people are finished living there, I mean, you go into these things knowing what you're doing. And if somebody wants to put a tiny house on the lot, he knows he's got until the people move out or the daughter moves in instead of the son. But it can't be used,
but think about that. So the daughter was there.
shouldn't be used for rental
Well,
to non-family.
I rented it to my son. I rented it to my daughter.
Yep,
They both moved out.
yep,
Now here comes Mrs. Brown from
yep.
Spencerville that wants to sell her home. And I like her and I'm gonna rent to Mrs. Brown. What's wrong with that?
Nothing.
Hey,
Well,
Nothing.
no.
But what
well-
happens though, when you decide to sell your home from somebody from Ottawa, who sees it as the perfect and the fantastic way to buy your home and then have an Airbnb in their backyard?
Okay, but we can outlaw Airbnbs
Yeah, it can't
because
be.
they're short-term rentals.
I don't
And we
think
can
you should.
outlaw them by saying that the person that's in that secondary dwelling, that temporary secondary dwelling, the person that's in that has to have a signed lease with a minimum of 1-year term. And if there's no signed document, then we're gonna accuse you of having an Airbnb, and we're gonna fine you $10,000 a month.
Sublet.
To me, we wanna avoid that Airbnb stuff. Believe me, I think we should avoid it.
And I mean, I think we talked about it earlier as well, as far as whether we want a secondary dwelling being separate or not. We have to firm up, if we're allowing these extra buildings, if you will, we've got to firm up that ownership question, because that's paramount to this whole conversation as well.
Yeah.
So that if you decide to move a year from now and you have a tenant living in here and there with a 2-year lease, just like if you had a renter in your house, in your own permanent residence, when you sell, that lease is no longer valid, last I heard, right? So unless that's changed. So I don't know that we're trying to reinvent the wheel here. I think that rule is already pretty steadfast.
Yeah, I mean, if the whole concept of this is to cure the affordable housing issue, does that do it? Like, does that get you where affordable housing is the key? Like, is this gonna solve affordable housing?
Well, I think we did, my opinion on that, this doesn't even begin to touch that, right? That's more of a provincial and federal issue than it is here. Better off to incentivize people by giving them a means to be able to go and buy a property that is designed for that purpose in in a township, in a subdivision that's ready to be built, for instance, but, that's not what we do.
I don't think we should try to outlaw things explicitly, especially when the entire corporation of Airbnb is built on disruption. And it'll create a black market, and then you can't regulate it. And you'll have situations where emergency services can't access citizens, whether they're citizens of our township or others, or foreign tourists. So I don't think we should move to try to make things harder for people to rent out temporarily or permanently. Anything, whether it's a chainsaw or a tiny home or a garden suite. It's a whack-a-mole, and it'll just pop up in another form, and it'll be messy. I don't think that's a stance that the township should take. We should, like what we were doing with our official plan, is try to design a lot or a space for tiny homes to work and be designed for that. We still haven't, I don't think, found a spot where we want to say that this is a tiny home zone, but we've created it in the draft official plan, I think. Isn't that something we're kind of directing Novatech to start? Anyway, I don't think we should try to outlaw things like Airbnb, because it's just going to create a black market. Believe me.
That's the next topic, I think.
Yeah, this is the next
It's all kind of together.
Okay,
because-
so hold on.
It does tie together.
All right, let me bring it back. So where are you now? Right.
Part of that dinner caused hodgepodge.
Yeah,
I think we need more discussion.
that organized confusion, I think.
I'm really enjoying the discussion.
Yeah, I like the feel of the
I,
discussion, actually.
My understanding was that we didn't have an option about it, whether we could allow one additional residential unit or two. My understanding was that the More Homes, More Choices Act says that we need to create provisions to allow both, and that might require some official plan amendments in order to do so. And that would have been my conversation with the counties. Now, Mayor, you may understand differently or know more information being on the affordable housing task force, but maybe our next step should just be to confirm that what are our options, like what can we create provisions around?
Well, provincial legislation is generally permissive, not prescriptive. And the way I read Bill 108 is that it's permissive, it's not prescriptive. So if it's permissive, we can do it, but it's not prescriptive that says we must do it. That's the way I read Bill 108. It says Bill 108 allowed one ARU in the main dwelling, and it didn't say prescribed, it said it allowed it.
So you think you need clarification?
I think so, because if I follow along Sherry Mills' report on this, it says this resulted in changes to section 16(3) of the Planning Act to reflect Bill 108 and requires OPs contain policies authorizing up to 2 additional residential units.
Up to 2.
Where are you
per
reading there
residential
now?
dwelling. I'm on the first paragraph of page 14 of 72.
So read it to me again.
I think you might be right, Mr. Mayor. This resulted, I'm halfway through the paragraph. This resulted
Go ahead.
in changes to section 16(3) of the Planning Act to reflect Bill 108 and requires OPs contain policies authorizing up to 2 additional residential units per residential dwelling.
So that says that our OPs requires our OPPs to contain policies authorizing up to 2, which would be 3 on the lot, wouldn't it then?
Mm-hmm.
Up to 3.
No,
It says up
3.
to, doesn't say it has to.
It says the
Doesn't say it
interpretation of county staff of 3 total units per property has been confirmed with MMH.
Yeah,
I guess there are gonna be
Can we keep it at 2?
places, well, and it depends where possibly.
Sure, yeah, sure, like.
I mean, I have 56 acres, you know, I wouldn't even notice.
Could you have 3? Sure. And I think that that was your point earlier too, correct?
yeah.
Yeah, was that there are places that, and I think maybe Connor as well, right? That
Yeah.
there are places that you encourage it and
Guidelines instead of.
And you see,
instead of-
we could very well have an OP policy that says on properties of 25, greater than 25 acres, our official plan will permit a secondary residential unit, a secondary dwelling unit in the main building and an additional structure. But the lot has to be more than 25 acres to allow that. That's a policy that could be in our official plan. If they force us to put a policy in the plan, that's the kind of a policy we could put in, then you're okay.
Well, and, you know, honestly, if I were to make another one, just because of, you know, the 80 meter or 80, or I guess my 95 out where I live, maximum size, I'd probably sell her off properties anyway. So I don't think it's not gonna affect me either way, I don't think. But, you know, there are gonna be people who, you know, I mean, I think, you know, Connor talked about the intent of this, or part of this anyway, was extra farm staffing and things like that for temporary seasonal workers, right? So, you know, that'd be perfect for it there, you know, but, and maybe there's some lots in towns that apply. So, and that's a bigger question, and this is where, you know, is 25 acres the right number? Because, you know, I don't think there's a lot of people in town that have 25 acres in town.
No.
And so, you know, that would push for sure say, we're not encouraging, in fact, we're telling you no if we're doing it in town, right?
Sure.
So,
Don't always go 25 acre lot. I have no idea.
before we go off of this,
I mean,
though,
I think I don't, you'll have to tell me if there's consensus. I don't have a clue.
this parking of 2+1 sounds good, but we should make sure that if we're doing 2+1 instead of 2+2, we gotta make sure we figure out where they're gonna be allowed to park on the road, because it's gonna happen. So we wanna make sure we review those.
Well, one thing you're not permitted to do is park in the front yard. Go to Cardinal and see what happens in the winter time.
No, I agree. I'm just saying for direction to staff, you know, there should be something in there.
Well, to
Where
me,
are you
we've,
gonna park your
to me,
horse?
we've just opened the discussion.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I think,
I know, you know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see a matrix. I'd like to see a matrix up on a sheet someplace that deals with all of these various permutations and combinations. And where are we with regard to this matrix? Because we've got about 5 different metrics going here. We've got urban, rural, we've got hamlets, big acreages. We've got fastened to the main dwelling, not fastened to the main dwelling, in the main dwelling. You know, is it temporary? Is it not temporary? Look at the number of metrics that we've got.
well,
going here.
and I mean, also in addition to that, you could have an area that, like, what kind of approval does it need? Like, we've already got some issues in lots of neighborhoods already. And the way that I understand it, as long as you meet minimum lot cover, maximum, whatever the amount of lot coverage that's left over, then you'd be able to add another dwelling. Like, what happens if there's already issues with that existing building, but yet under bylaw, they become able to add to it, creating even more problems? Like, to me, it just seems like we're creating a bit of a nightmare that's not needed. Anyway, all right. Or do you need more? You don't need more. This was a discussion item for you. Do you need more? Do you want to discuss it again next meeting?
I'm sure it's gonna come up many more
All right,
times.
can you add it to the agenda? I think we'll have consensus for that, to add it as a discussion item until the mayor no longer wants to have it added as a discussion item.
See the.
No, I think we all take affordable housing and affordable housing seriously. And I think in this township, we are taking it seriously. We're just not sure that this is the appropriate way. And let's keep knocking it out until we get to something that works.
I see the clerk had a question.
Sorry.
Not a question, while you guys were chit chatting and other people were taking notes, I was just on the Ontario Legislative Assembly website on the royal assent of this Bill 108. And per Schedule 12 of the Planning Act, amending the Planning Act for the additional residential unit policy, there was a question about the counties saying whether or not this is actually required. So I'm just going to read a very quick overview, a snippet of what is actually taking place as to what is actually going to be required of us and what is not. So currently subsection 16.3 of the Planning Act requires official plans to contain policies authorizing the second residential units by authorizing 2 residential units in a house with no residential unit in an auxiliary building or structure, and by authorizing the residential unit in a building or structure auxiliary to the house containing a single residential unit. Now the subsection is reenacted to require policies authorizing additional residential units by authorizing 2 residential units in a house and by also authorizing a residential unit in a building or structure auxiliary to the house.
Geez, talk about just complicating
Yeah.
and confusing the issue further.
Yeah. So it will require us to do the one with 2 units in the house and unit in a building or structure auxiliary to the house.
So the only thing that we can control on that is we have to allow it through
If that was policy.
through a policy, but like you said, 25 acres, and then the problem, yeah, sure, we can create, sure.
We'll have to go more in depth as to research that, but right now the Planning Act, that's all it states. It doesn't state anything else that I can see, but that's just of my 2-minute review.
Yeah, it might be worth getting some more input from the page too.
Through the chair, I understand the sentiment of where allowing it but restricting it to something like 25 acres comes from. But in the same discussion, we're saying we're all for and taking seriously the matter of affordable housing. I don't think we should do something like that where we're making it affordable housing, but to people who can afford to have housing on a large lot and make them landlords over to other people. I don't like that. I think we should enable it where there's a minimum lot size, where it's safe and there's enough parking and, you know.
Safe, what's safe?
Well, so it's not immediately next to Highway 2 with no barriers, whatever you want to make safe. I think we shouldn't really make it harder for people to get housing. If you look for rentals in this area, anywhere in this area, it's very difficult. And people are paying way too much in very small spaces. I don't think we should create more barriers for people to just rent and exist. Saying minimum 25 acres is frankly insulting to a lot of people. And even if that was 5 acres, you can fit a lot of people in a lot of buildings safely and legally on a small space. And 5 acres is a lot of space. 25 acres is an enormous amount of space where, yeah, the landlord really maybe should look at severing off spots and then creating more lots for building and more accessory buildings and such. There's very low inventory for affordable housing in this immediate area, especially rentals that are affordable.
And do you think this is gonna change this situation?
My question was gonna be,
Yes.
how is this gonna change that at all? I don't see how that, what the clerk just read, how that's going to address affordable housing at all.
Well, the minister and the Legislative Assembly of Ontario believes it can, and I think it can if we open up what we are willing to do. Enable people to renovate an existing house and add another unit, or divide their house in 2 for $5,000 and create a townhouse or a double house, whatever that term is, out of one building. People don't need as much space as they used to. People have smaller families. They're more and more sitting in front of a desk or a TV. You can take a lot of buildings that already exist and make units that are nice and big and roomy for a single or a couple or a family. And if you want to bring in a tiny home or small building or, converted shipping container and attach it to the septic and the well, as we've discussed in previous meetings, I think that should be allowed on lots much smaller than 25 acres.
Well, no question, shipping containers are a great place to live. I don't know how safe they are.
They're very durable.
I think just as we stated before, until the change, the landlord tenant act change, they can bring in all these qualifications they want of being able to put units and smaller units in place, and they're not gonna happen. Unless it's somebody that just came out of the city and never was involved in rental at all, and maybe they do it, and then for the next 10 years, they're kicking themselves in the butt that they ever did it, so.
It sort of speaks, my situation's a little unique in that we have a tri-generation home. Now we bought it all together. It's not like it has a separate kitchen or anything for my in-laws or anything, but, that exists, and there's, a bunch of us living under the same roof, but I have children with autism, and down the road, if they move out or they want to move out, and again, like I said, I would separate, but that's not necessarily what everybody else would do. Building, a unit in the back that, I just used to support them, not necessarily getting, there's no lease agreement necessarily. There could be different situations, I guess what I'm saying. And then not all of them would fall under the Untitled Act, obviously, is what I'm trying to say there. So yeah, but I guess they'd have to based on, sorry, if I read that correctly, they would have to based on that though, in the Untitled Act kind of conversations. So, as we said, fix your act.
You don't necessarily have to have a lease to have renters.
Well, I mean, even month to month is considered a lease. It's just not a.
But the act, doesn't it require a lease for anything enforceable?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying not everything is going to be, under the Landlord Tenant Act.
Well, more like what Mr. Hunter was saying. Just because it's difficult to deal with, the 3% of tenants that might be a nightmare, doesn't mean you should restrict the other 97% of people to be able to start a business and be landlord or renovate a house and sell it to someone who wants to be a landlord that already has tenants, and then move on and continue improving properties in the township. I think we should try to open our arms as wide as we can to people who want to move here and rent.
I think we should open our arms to people who want to move here and buy something.
If you have something that you can buy and then sublet or rent out part of it to help pay for it, that's even more appealing.
So when it comes to,
You can't discriminate against people that haven't got the dollars and cents to buy a house.
sure, but at the same time, I'm just thinking of, Spencerville here. So the lots that have been used here in Spencerville, you're saying that you are for intensification? Because I certainly got the impression you were against them.
David Street should have been a duplex, is my opinion from the beginning. And it was brought to this committee under the impression that it was going to be a single dwelling home. So the one on Spencer Street, Mr. Nosi's property as a duplex makes more sense for me. That's my opinion. We should see other places in other towns and this town have more duplexes if it makes sense. Intensification in terms of taking a quadplex and then making it into a 12plex like we were talking about at the beginning doesn't make sense, but there's a lot of things that restrict that. The septic and the well and the distance to the lot lines. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of barriers that already exist, but I don't think a barrier like you can only do that on 25 acres is a good one.
No, 25 acres to me wasn't an actual theoretical number. It was just.
But sometimes those theoretical numbers, like maximum 2 shipping containers, get written down and voted on real quick. And then they're permanent, because it used to be 0, no restriction on the amount of shipping containers.
But it's not
now we have a restriction of 4.
right, but
But
that's
it
not,
could have been
that's not the discussion right now, though. So,
You know, it just triggers, we had this conversation about that what happened to David Street issue, okay? And you know, and it circles there, and it started in my mind percolating here now too, is that, you know, in this whole process, this new process, you know, how do we, you know, there'll be a lot of public feedback, especially your residents in the area. You know, we haven't talked about anything that how what mechanisms they have to be a part of that conversation, whether or not you're gonna also have 12 units of living space where those 4 are gonna be going in there, right? So I don't know what to do with this kind of information, but it is something we have to consider as well, because, you know, there will be a lot of hue and cry if that 4 turns into 12 unplanned.
Well, in the official plan amendment, it's going to go through a public process. I mean, if this is telling us that we have to amend our official plans, then it has to go through public meetings.
But it doesn't affect us until it's the reality of the day, right?
well, and in fairness, we're in a public meeting right now.
Oh, I know.
Right, I mean, it's an agenda, it's published, where anybody's able to attend and contribute during question
I think that's why we
periods as
have
well.
community members on the panel, though, right?
Right,
Is that
but
a
it's
discussion?
exactly why we have a community.
The one thing is, we gotta realize too, we're saying we're gonna write it down, that you can have a secondary dwelling in your house. They're saying that, we have no choice. Let's be honest, I can drive around Spencerville here, I'm sure you can drive around Cardinal, you can drive around Johnstown. There's already all kinds of secondary dwelling units that are being rented out in houses that are already in the township. Whether we ever had it in our plan, if they're allowed or not, they're there, all kinds of them. Walk up Center Street here, there's 6 anyway on it, I can count.
Yeah, but the difference that changes though is that now our building inspector is allowed to issue a building permit for their construction. A lot of them that are there because they're grandfathered in or they existed previously. And we don't go into people's homes to check and see how many units there are inside the house. Now, mind you, we did in Cardinal, because in Cardinal, when we set the sewer and the water rates, if we knew that there were 2 units in that house, each unit had to have a meter. And that's something else you have to think about.
Yeah, well, on the tiny homes, I was gonna say that. They would have to have their own meter. Like they say, you have to have your own water and sewer, but they would have to have their own meter to boot. They just can't tie up to the existing house.
And an electrical meter as well.
Yeah, an electrical meter, yeah.
Or is it required that they are attached to existing
Requires that they
services,
share.
right?
Sorry?
They have to share the services.
They have to share the
So how
services.
do you share a service like a tiny home in the backyard? And I'm renting it to the mayor. And I'm paying for the water, my meter's in the basement.
Shares to figure out.
How do you justify the money?
But when we were doing that thinking, we were not thinking in terms of sewer and water. We've now introduced a completely different metric into the discussion. A completely different metric. Because remember, in Cardinal, there's a $15 hookup charge to hook up the water and a $1,500 hookup charge to hook up the sewer. So if I'm building a duplex, each side of that duplex pays $1,500 for water and $1,500 for sewer. All right, now, if there's a granny suite, let's call it a secondary dwelling unit on one side of that duplex, are they get a free ride? Why should they get a free ride? There's no reason that they should have a free ride.
It says that you're sharing the water and sewer with that, period. So they are getting.
So that means I own the duplex, okay? The water and sewer bill comes to me, but I got this little 800 square foot unit, secondary dwelling unit in my duplex. I get his water bill and his sewer bill.
Yes, definitely.
And you tell me how much I'm gonna pay you, Mr. No, seriously, I'm renting it. I got a nice garden down there. I'm growing my marijuana plants.
I do want to see this, by the way, happen.
Yeah.
And what happens then with that? I'm using all kinds of water.
So you build.
And
it with
you're paying $120 now a month, and all of a sudden you get this little house and it goes to $280.
So now you.
And I say, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm giving you your $400 a month for rent. And does it include water and sewer? Yeah.
Well, that's up to you.
That's where you better have a lease agreement with your.
But
So we never
so
had this
this
conversation.
though, we're talking about Cardinal. So would there be implications if somebody wanted to do that here in Spencerville? Because we just had the discussion about not allowing or connecting to partial services.
But you got
So if somebody else is connecting,
same sewer.
so they need
No, in
a
Spencerville,
same sewer.
in Spencerville,
Yeah.
$1,500 hookup charge to hook up to sewer.
So,
Not on a new lot though, only on like.
No, any new construction,
Construction.
so that's a new construction. I gotta pay $1,500.
Did we?
Because we just had the
Any
discussion about the
zones
new Baker one where they're not allowed to connect to partial services, correct?
Except with infill or minor rounding of
Oh,
development.
infill or minor. Right, okay, sorry.
Did we, I can't remember, I just can't remember at this point. Was there any zone exclusions for our secondary housing, secondary dwelling, I guess the extra dwelling, the extra dwelling? Was it all just rural areas or was it?
I believe RLS.
RLS, yes, for sure. And I think there is a minimum or a maximum lot coverage and all that sort of stuff with it as well, though, right?
The secondary dwelling unit and the secondary dwelling would have to comply with the maximum lot coverage, the setbacks. It still has to comply.
Sure, it has to
with zone
comply with all
licensing.
that stuff.
But it sounds like we missed the water and sewer because we never, I don't think we either contemplated or I certainly wasn't thinking about it either from a situation, in Steve's backyard, for instance, what do you do with that?
Yeah,
Well,
but
it's
the
not
way,
well and septic, so.
the way it's roadable, they gotta tie into his sewer that's going, into his line that's going to the main line, so it's up to him, whatever he charges.
Which raises a ton of questions, like even for health unit and all kinds of things, right? Because most of those places aren't approved for 40% more capacity and stuff too. But anyway, okay, good discussion. I think we'll round it up there. I think the mayor doesn't need any more direction than he's already gotten. I think he knows that we'll be back again. Do we need more clarification from MMAH, or is that enough? Like what you read, do we need more clarification? I mean, that basically says we have to do it whether we like it or not, right?
Through the chair, it never hurts to get additional clarification from
So
MMH.
can we do that? Is that okay with everyone if we get clarification as to what we're required to do?
What says may, what says shall.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or has to. Prescribed, I think was the word. All right, so short-term accommodations, Wendy.
Oh boy, do I regret this. Well, first of all, my apologies. I realized today when Councillor Cameron pointed it out that this staff report wasn't attached to the agenda. So it was added to the agenda online as soon as we realized it. And I emailed a copy to the committee members, hoping that some of you might have a chance to review it ahead of time, but I'm gonna review it. I'll go through it pretty carefully now. Do you think you're about to see something?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if it's for everyone, it's getting, that conversation went on for a long time and it's getting to 8:45. This conversation I see as being equally as long for us to do it properly. And with the new information that you've provided, it might make more sense to just defer this discussion until if need be, or if at all possible, and the committee wills it that way, to defer this discussion on this item to our September meeting. I just don't see it happening in 15 minutes
I think you're right.
or whatever. I see it as being, maybe even part of the residential unit discussion, and we can have a nice big discussion again next time. But I mean, I'm the chair, not the committee, and I need everyone to sort of just give me a nods of head if they're okay with.
So through the chair, if there's nothing pressing on it being decided now or anything, then I'm okay with that too.
Councillor?
No, I'm fine.
Councillor?
I'm fine with
Mr.
it.
Mayor?
I'd like to see it deferred. Same briefing note, come back
Yeah.
on the next.
Same thing deferred. Greg, Connor, are you okay with that? Yeah.
Good.
So full unanimous consent, let's just do that. That makes the most sense. All right, so then let's move to information item number 3, which is the aggregate resources master plan. Wendy, can you give us a little staff guidance on that, or staff?
The counties is undertaking a study on aggregate resources. They anticipate a county's official plan amendment following their study based on what they learn from it. Wish I was smarter about it for this committee, but I know Councillor Hunter has also attended the open house, so maybe he might be able to provide some more information. Our official plan actually anticipates an official plan amendment once this aggregate study is done. So the counties has hired Meridian Planning to do some work and determine where the aggregate resources are in the counties, in our township is what we care most about, and help us determine what kinds of studies or when a study is required if someone were applying, like if they're a planning act application, so they want to segment their land and there are some bedrock resources right next to their lot. They would need a land use compatibility study to determine that more development on that lot isn't going to preclude or hinder the extraction of those resources that are there. And I think Meridian is going to help us with those questions and determining that. I wanted to give this committee a heads up that study is underway. And there's a link to more resources on the county's website there. Not sure what else to say. I can do my best to answer some questions.
I'm sure, I'm just gonna look over in Councillor Hunter's direction first
Well,
and let him fire away.
They've, study's underway, and I brought up a few different questions. Well, from one of their matrix on defining where they're gonna identify bedrock extraction, not gravel, their gravel metrics for their gravel. I think us and myself and industry can live with them. But their one metric was that they were going to define any bedrock resources were defined any place under 10 meters of overburden. Anybody in the industry knows that if it's 10 meters of overburden, unless that overburden is sand, which would already be identified under the Pits and Quarries Act as a sand resource, or granular A gravel that's good enough to make gravel. 10-meter overburden, nobody can move 10 meters of overburden and make a quarry financially operable. Because you're only, most quarries at the maximum depth is going to be 30 meters, and very few are allowed to go that deep. We're allowed to go 20 meters. But,
From surface?
10 and then
yeah.
So 10 meters of overburden would make 10 meters of quarry.
Well,
Of
no,
rock.
we're allowed to go 20 meters into the rock.
Oh, 20 meters into
20
the
meters
rock.
of rock.
After
We're
the
allowed
original
to
10?
take the overburden, but the
Okay.
deepest overburden we have on our quarry, and I'm using mine as an example, is 3 meters in the one spot.
3 meters, not
And
10.
it's really not profitable in that small section. There's one section that's licensed that we're never going to take the overburden off of. Because we've got too much rock over here to go a meter of overburden over.
why would you?
10, and I brought it up and they said, well, that's provincial standards of 10 meters. Well, their provincial standards are way off base. They're not. To limit that land and say, well, you're not going to be able to sever and build a house there, or unless you get a special permit, you're not going to be able to establish an industry in on there because this is good rock 10 meters down. Well,
It's just way
to
too
me,
much.
to look at, we take our industrial park for example, we're close to rock out there.
Yep.
And that's why that industrial park is so valuable, because the footings don't have to go down very deep to get footings. If you're in some of the Ottawa areas, where I know couple of developments there. They had to go down 35 meters with 4-foot diameter casings put down there, poured full of concrete to be able to start build the building.
35 meters.
Right?
Wow, 35 meters down. Oh,
35 meters down, and had to have, I forget the name of the building that's on there now, but they had to be only 2 meters apart, each one of them.
90 feet.
Like
So if
there's
they-
100 and some of them they put in.
90 feet.
Millions of dollars
Stories.
cost to put in to establish the building.
Oh,
So why would we want to, in an area, like it's would be a good place to put industrial building on, because it's not that deep to go down and get onto a solid footing. But to limit it, but it's going to be an aggregate resource, like even in the Toronto area where aggregates getting scarce, like it's still not going to be profitable to take that, because you got to get rid of it someplace. That overburden's got to go someplace. And once the quarry's been established, like ours for pretty near 40 years now, if we really wanted to, the lower overburden we do, we could go where we are now and go down our second lift, our depth, and then get over to where there, and then we could start putting the overburden back into that, because we're as deep as we go. But then we get into environmental things, because that's filling with water. Now we're getting more mud and sediment there, so now we gotta develop more sediment ponds. We've got, instead of 2-stage sediment pond, we've got to go to a 3-stage sediment pond and stuff. So then it just gets more and more expensive down the way. But they didn't seem to want to listen to that. Now there is South Nation Conservation Authority is involved with it, because there's exemptions for where they're going to lay out the map. South Nation's going to look at it. They're going to say, no, this takes in, this is too close to this wetland, this is too close to this creek. The Heritage Canal was brought up as one of the issues by Merricksville Wilford there, that, well, we can't define this within half a mile of a heritage thing. You're going to ruin the heritage of this, or you start blasting here and affect that. So it's going to be interesting to see when they bring it back, and when Conservation Authority and Heritage Canada, Ontario gets done with it. What's left in there, I don't really know how much we're going to get to put into it to say, like, I think there's a vast area that they've got marked out in our township right now, because we are close to the rock, and a lot of their areas here, all up through the west part of Spencerville here, and up this way, we're right on the rock. Right?
So what you're saying basically though, is that any place that has up to 10 meters of overburden over bedrock, that's basically sterilized from future use for any purpose.
Unless you get a special exemption.
That's ridiculous.
You gotta apply for special exemptions to.
Yeah, that's an issue for sure.
That is a big issue.
So
And they're saying that the 10 meters is a provincial average. I don't believe that.
that's what they're saying.
No,
Saying that
that's-
when it's 10 meters, they're talking is what's being as the metrics being used to identify it. So
Are you in on these all the time?
I'm notified of that one, and set in on it, but they have notified if there's any other hearings coming up.
Councillor Hunter, I didn't think you would mind. I asked for you to be included on the notification list. So you're on the mailing list whenever there is another meeting.
Yeah, I know I'm on it, but we haven't heard anything.
No, there hasn't been.
There's never been nothing come back. I don't know how long they'll be really going through them, because I think before they bring it back, they're gonna have to have certain nations. Angela and them's got to comment on it there and review what they're saying, and then overlay theirs, and then we have, Eaton Grapple hasn't laid out a heritage map yet. Storm up Dundas Glengarry, they finished, South Nation did theirs, they finished their heritage map for heritage forest, heritage building search, and overlay that over it, and they're taking that into consideration there. But as Angela said there, that heritage funds, it's more province puts a higher level on aggregate than they do in heritage. So if it's
Resources.
yeah, well, that's a heritage forest there, the first growth pine in there, but they're there's rock underneath it 3 meters down, it's a lot more valuable than what the trees are.
Sure.
So is there any way though that between now and the end of the month, between you and South Nation, that you could come up with some sort of a council, a resolution, a motion to put before a council that this 10 meters of overburden is an unrealistic standard, and it's a standard which will just end up sterilizing large amounts of acreages from future development. And you know, you make a good point. Where the overburden is only a meter or two thick, that's a great place for any kind of industrial development, because you don't have to go down 30 feet to get your footings in. I mean, that's the problem we're gonna have at the port. We picked the place at the port where we only had to go down, I don't know, 6 or 8 meters, not even that much, to get those bins set, right? But we know that if we move 10 feet closer to the river, we'd have to go 30 feet to get to bedrock. So that 10 meter standard is just not real.
Well, we brought that up. I don't know where, I think we're gonna have to really basically wait until they come back, because this is just a preliminary. This isn't gonna be the final list.
Well, that's what they tell you.
They come
That's
back
what they
with a
tell you.
preliminary draft, and I think that's when then we, Nation and there's more than me mentioned it. There were different ones who brought it up. Like, I think they're gonna get a lot of feedback, I think, from a lot of provinces. I think it's something maybe or through your political connections, maybe to mention it to our minister there, that this is something he, as a housing, that he should be involved in, that this is gonna affect areas where maybe subdivisions would want to be established or industry wants to win. We don't, because this is going province wide. It's not just here, it's going province wide, so it doesn't really make sense. I don't know who they've got advising on there, where they come up with this idea of 10 meters.
So what's your?
Well, my theory on these kinds of problems is to try to get ahead of the wave before this 10 meter standard appears in a report someplace. You know, that's my theory.
Get it out to all the other municipalities.
Get it out to the other municipalities and try to get a bunch of municipalities signing on to it. So that when the Meridian's first draft appears, that 10 meter standard is not there.
Now, we did this, like when we had this conversation with the official plan and said, we'll let the counties do their mapping. It was because the anticipation was gonna be a lesser zone than we already had marked out today in the discussions we had. This doesn't sound like that's
I
the
thought it was
case.
to be a greater zone.
Greater
Bigger zone, not
of
less.
aggregate?
Yeah.
I got the exact opposite impression, but
Maybe I'm thinking wrong.
you know, we get what I believe they said is a lot of those zones which had aggregate now were they're not usable aggregate really, they go away. Is how I interpreted that.
Yeah, but there were some that were mined out.
Yeah.
No,
They
no,
were-
I know that for sure. But some of the other zones, because I mean, there was a lot of zones and everyone said, well, look at all the properties in Patrick. Well, it was gonna be, I got the feeling it was gonna be less than that. So, you know, we're now tied to saying whatever the county says to this, or do we have a recourse to say, you know, change
I don't
our
even
mind?
think the counties
think
have
that's what we're saying.
say
It's not even the county.
this is provincial, this is coming through the provincial ministry, they're being directed that they're gonna do this. I don't think the counties even has much say. That mapping's coming in and it's coming basically through the agri industry in Western Ontario. The aggregate's getting so short up there because of development taking place and subdivisions are moving out and they're building where right next to quarries where there was places to expand, and now they can't expand because of all the setbacks and blasting and stuff. Now they can't expand and they're running out of aggregate. That's why, great for us down here, that's why the fire is loading gravel at the port fed to Toronto, because it can be shipped up there quicker than, because now they're drawing from Orangeville into Toronto to get aggregate in there.
What would the appropriate number be?
Well,
How do you come
I
about
suggested 2 and 5 meters.
And is there fear of that in the discussion that would like eliminate some of the potential places closer to the big city?
I don't know, I talked
Already know
to George and one from Acon, and they don't know where this
The number came from.
come from. Nobody seems to know, it seems to be somebody pulled it out of their hat, and said this is, I'm sure they've got somebody in Toronto that's come up with an idea that this what makes sense. Maybe in the Toronto area, maybe it does make sense in Toronto area, because they're trying to eliminate subdivisions getting built too close to, okay, it's 10 meters here, but 50 meters over there, 25 over here, but we want this defined clean over here, because now this is gonna give us a setback away from over there. Like, that'd be the only rationality that I can come up with, talking to a few of the ones in the industry, that only rationality is because like ours, if you come into our quarry and look at it, we go along there at a meter over here, and then the rock shifts, and there's a 6-foot drop over here, and we drop down there, and there's shifts in some quarries I've been in where it's a 15-foot drop, and you've only got 2 foot of dirt here, you're clean, all of a sudden you go over here and start digging the hole, and you dig, oh, there's the rock way down there, but extended length for my hole. I think it's, maybe this is the rationale they're having on,
It's a long, it's 30 feet.
make sure they get far enough back away from areas that you don't run into this, but.
We need to say something. Connor, did you have a comment?
I was just gonna say, maybe they meant 10 feet, because with the provincial standards for having a beehive from a residential lot line, it used to be 30 feet, and then they changed it to 30 meters, which doesn't convert, but maybe someone
Messed up.
replace
all meters from feet without changing the number.
And it happens all over the place.
Could be a possibility.
It happens.
So what do you need? What do you need?
Well, I don't say that we need anything. I'm just inviting Councillor Hunter to make an issue of it.
Well, I think
And
the
let
idea
council deal with the issue.
the idea of having a resolution isn't a bad idea, and probably the quicker the better. If
Yeah, we could bring something. Our staff draw up some type of resolution that we could send around, saying we don't agree with, we think that 10 meters is way too much over there to be considered being.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, get us something.
Yeah.
and then maybe can we also just ask for clarification, because Connor, I think that's actually a valid point, that is it actually meters, or could it possibly be? I mean,
Where did you
they've
get
done
it?
that work, but
And what is the source, of that?
Yes.
can we ask that question too?
Oh, we could, I don't know, when we were talking to those.
Right, it's worth, I mean, I don't think that's a load of work to ask
You'll
that,
never-
and
you'll never
I think
find
it's a
out.
good point that, it could happen.
It was one of the issues anyway, and one of the issues of the conservation authority, I think that they're going to be bringing up is just the value they put on heritage over aggregate too, so I think that's going to be something that conservation authorities are going to be bringing up heavy on a lot of these sources and stuff. So, because right now, when you've seen the map there, there's an awful lot of gray area.
A lot of restricted.
40% of the towns are pretty near under gray area.
It's a lot. Okay, good. So we'll get a follow-up at another meeting and a resolution possibly.
Yeah, staff should prepare a resolution to oppose that, like, to say that 10 meters is not feasible.
Well, maybe just saying that we're opposing the metrics of a 10-meter overburden and then let it go from there and see where we can get it to come down to, rather than saying we go with 5 and maybe we could have got it to 3 if we would have just kind of just say we don't agree with
The 10.
the amount of overburden that they're defining.
Is that, again, I need a nodding of heads, I think, in that direction.
Yep.
You comfortable with that, Wendy? You gonna look? Okay. All right, so almost the last one. Digital service plan. I think, correct? Yeah, it is, yes. You wanna
Mhm.
do the expansion on that?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You guys might remember a presentation from Justin St. Pierre, our Digital Service Squad member. That round of the Digital Main Street funding has ended and a new round has begun. We've Prescott, with the support of the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal and the Augusta Township, has applied for the next round of funding, and we got it. So we're going to have another South Grenville Digital Service Squad, and I hope this one is just as successful, if not more, than the last one. It sure was a lot of fun to hear great feedback from our businesses in the last round, and I know it was well received, and some businesses did get some great support from it. So we're in the process of hiring our new digital service squad member. The advertising is up on our website, and yeah, I'm just looking forward to another round, but wanted to make this committee aware of it. It happened pretty fast from the time the funding was available to the time Prescott got the application in. Otherwise, I would have wanted to bring it to the committee beforehand. So sorry that this is after the fact, but I felt pretty confident that you would all be supportive.
Yes, I've seen, thanks, Wendy. I've seen Prescott's sharing it, and Councillor Dilba has shared the ad as well. I've seen it. It's fantastic for the community. Are there new guidelines? Does it make it less restrictive for some businesses that maybe didn't, or do you know? Is that a fair question?
I think for the digital transformation grant, I mean, you have to have like a brick and mortar storefront, but if you have a seasonal booth at a farmer's market, they're counting that, so that makes you eligible. The Shop Here program is still available for even a home business, so that is a free website really for at least 3 months, and I think you take it over after that. But support from our digital service squad member and just doing the Digital Main Street program, that's free for anyone. So even if you don't qualify for the digital transformation grant, you can still benefit from this program.
And did it, well, my last question would be, did it show in there the website on, I mean, I know you can talk to Justin or whoever they find for the salesperson, but if somebody wants to go on and have a look online and make sure that they qualify, how would a business do that? Would they just go to the
You can go to the Digital Main Street website. You can also go to SGDSS, stands for South Grenville Digital Service Squad, .weebly.com. So that was created using the free services that Digital Main Street and Justin put that together for us in the last round. And he also put a whole bunch of other business resources on there, like tips on how to make a business plan and just like basic good knowledge and resources. He made a podcast that interviewed some other business owners and talked about the success of the program that they had with it, and can't say enough good things about it. I'm grateful that Prescott's taking the lead on it as well, and then having to build out the application because it's some extra work for them.
Good, fantastic. Thanks, Wendy. Chris, any comments?
No, I mean, I think, to your point, let's just add 6 cents, if not more, and you know, it was a good program, it felt like, and you know, opening up the doors to allow more businesses to use it would be great as well, for sure. So, you know, I think it's come up to recommend you like it, so. Yeah.
Steve?
No, I just think one of your questions were, I don't think that people who applied for it, the first one, the companies can apply for this one. I think I read something like that.
I wasn't sure. I thought that they could. So, but I think that that's one of the things we need is a little bit more info when it comes to stuff like that. For sure.
But no, it's good.
It's great. Councilor Cameron?
Not just a comment. I do believe that there has been a individual from the village of Cardinal applied for this. The new hiring.
Good. Mr. Mayor?
Well, they're just saying to make businesses and the public aware of the new funding and free service. We are having a launch event on August the 19th at 9:30 a.m. in Westport. So they're asking the mayors to be present for that. Maybe if there's other members of council that want to go to that launch event, let me know. I'll probably go.
August 19th, 9:30?
Yes, and they're saying that the 3 digital service squads in Leeds and Grenville recently received $100,000. So I don't know how the 100,000 is divided, but I mean, that's a fairly substantial grants for three digital services.
Yeah,
We
then
got
get-
29,000.
Yeah, 29,000 for us.
We got 29 now.
Councillor Hunter?
No, I think it's good. I'm really impressed with this presentation, so glad it's keep going.
Yeah, me too. Connor?
No questions.
All right, nothing under play, inquiries and notices of motion. Does anybody have any inquiries or notices of motion? Connor?
I just wanted to ask if other people got a page in their mailbox from Mr. Marcellus about the bylaw review. And if not, I wanted to just submit it to the staff as part of the record, I guess, because if it was just me, then it might have been targeted.
I
I think
certainly,
it was not targeted because I put one in Chad's mailbox, but he didn't put one in my mailbox.
I didn't get one, so.
I think he skipped council.
I didn't get one.
I don't know.
And I'm not gonna read it, but I'll
When was it delivered?
I was gone, I picked it up today.
It was either Thursday or Friday.
Okay, so is that okay? So can it be distributed to this committee for the next meeting? Is that,
If that's the will of the committee, yes. It can also be handed over to us and given through council correspondence.
I
Just
think
put
that's
it
probably
in,
more appropriate.
yeah, correspondence.
Yeah, okay.
So then we'll get it before the month.
But what exactly does it say?
Well, it's notice of motion and it's an inquiry, so
That's a lot.
I made the mistake of going down this road and
Yeah,
turned it into
that's
a
not-
debate
yeah.
last time, and I'm not going down that road again tonight. So it's inquiries and notices of motion, and that's it. So you
Just a
can
question.
give it to staff, and staff can put it in correspondence
So how do the non-council members get it?
through, I think they have access to council correspondence, do they not? No?
Through the chair, only council receives council correspondence.
So to answer Mr. Mondler's question, how would he get a copy?
If I'm not entitled, that's fine.
Well, I think you can't share with you directly. Okay. Are there further inquiries or notices of motion? Mr. Mondler, Mr. Hunter, Councilor Hunter, sorry, Mr. Mayor? Chris? Nothing? Good, okay, so questionable members, no, we're good. No closed session, so I need adjournment, somebody to move. Chris Ward, seconded by Rick Mondler, all in favor?